What's happening, everyone? James Lynch here. We have a bit of industry news that I wanted to cover in today's video. Of course, with the new UFC deal with Paramount starting in 2026, there has been some movement going on, so I wanted to cover that in today's video. And we'll start first with the old TV partner of the UFC, which is ESPN. That era is over, but they have re-signed Brett Okamoto, one of the top media members in this industry. I'll just read the post here on Instagram. Some of my best memories of my life came from the UFC on ESPN era. I am grateful for it. Gave me over the last 7 years. As the sport moves on to the next chapter, I'm very happy to say I signed a new contract today to continue covering UFC on ESPN. I've been here since 2010, and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. See you all in 2026. So ESPN going to be continuing their MMA coverage, despite the fact that they wanted the TV rights. I was kind of wondering about this, if Brett was going to stick around, but good for him. I've met Brett a number of times. A really nice guy. Can't say enough good things about Brett in this industry. And like I said, to be in the industry as long as he has, very impressive. Because this is an industry that it's tough to make a living in, and Brett's got a very solid gig over there at ESPN. I'm curious, sort of, obviously they're going to scale back their coverage. I don't know if we'll be seeing Brett at events or how that's going to work with them not being on the not being TV partners with the UFC anymore. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But obviously with ESPN being one of the major sports networks, it's good to see that they are going to continue cover combat sports. I'm stumbling over my words here. I don't know why. Like in Canada, just as an example, so you guys know, so in Canada, we used the TV rights used to be with TSN here in Canada. They've since switched over to Sportsnet at the end of 2024. So Aaron Bronstetter, who used to work for TSN, he actually moved over to Sportsnet. So that's a bit different. I mean, I wasn't sure if Brett was going to leave ESPN to go over to Paramount. Looks like they don't need to do that because obviously they have some people and the person I'm going to mention next as well that they're going to be having there as far as their coverage. So interesting that ESPN's still going to do combat sports coverage, which is great because that's, again, there's a lot of need to cover the UFC, I think. So that's really good to see that. And you can see John Anik chiming in, Megan O'Leary. A lot of people happy to see Brett back in his spot here at ESPN. So curious to see what their coverage is going to look like going forward as they are no longer TV partners. Now, I mentioned there's going to be some changes on the Paramount side of things, CBS side of things. And one of them that we found out yesterday is Morning Kombat, the show with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell. Of course, they won a bunch of awards at the MMA awards as well. One of the dynamic duos in the industry. You can see the topic here. Brian Campbell doing a video on the Morning Kombat channel saying that Brian Campbell to leave show January 5th takes on a bigger role at CBS and Paramount. So that kind of makes sense because this was sort of, I know Brian Campbell has been working for CBS for a very long time. He talks about that in the video as well. But I'm assuming his responsibility is getting bigger. Probably doesn't have time to do a weekly show with Luke Thomas. So, that makes sense that he's sort of moving on. You can see a lot of people very happy for Brian as well. A lot of people like the show. I'll be honest, I'm not a regular watcher of Morning Kombat. To each their own, but it's very popular, and I can't deny that. And I also can't deny that they've won awards and all that as well. You see a lot of people saying they're bummed out by this. We don't really have a lot of duos and MMA as far as like the TV side and personality side goes, even on the YouTube side, like we don't really have two people together that sort of, I guess the closest thing we would have on the YouTube side of things would be like weighing in with John McCarthy and Josh Thompson. And we obviously have Henry Cejudo and Kamaru Usman with the Pound for Pound show. So most people here kind of bummed to see Brian leave. A lot of people wondering if the show is going to be continuing. Luke Thomas coming out in his own tweet saying, big announcement from Brian Campbell today. I'll have lots to say in the coming weeks. For now, please know that Morning Kombat will continue with details and announcements to come. Thank you all for the Morning Kombat fans for your incredible loyalty. We appreciate you so much. So they've been, I think originally they were on Showtime, and then they went to DraftKings, and then I think they're kind of doing their own thing now. So not really sure where this sort of stands with all that. You can see a lot of people, again, congratulating Brian Campbell. Very well respected in the industry as far as what he's been able to do. And Brian Campbell as well adds another layer to this with the boxing side. So it's a no-brainer that they're giving him a bigger role because we obviously know that TKO is getting into boxing as well too. So with Brian, he's getting to do a lot of different things there. So some sort of moves as well that have gone on. Some people obviously upset. I know they've had some guest hosts on a bunch of times. I think Aaron Bronsetter's been on there, Jed Meshew. So we'll see if any of them end up stepping into more of a permanent role there. So we'll have to kind of find out. But I do wonder if Luke's maybe just going to continue doing the show on his own and then having sort of a rotating, guest host. Because I think for the most part, the guest hosts that they've had on do have main gigs. Like Jed's with more MMA fighting. Aaron's obviously with Sportsnet. Chuck Mendenhall, I think, is with Uncrowned, right? So Again, not a regular viewer of the show on my end, but this is, important stuff. This is, again, I did a video when Ariel left MMA fighting. It's pretty big news here. So to me, this is stuff that, and let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of YouTube creators who won't even touch on this stuff because they don't care. They're just, again, a lot of people in the YouTube space, they're not really covering what's going on in the actual MMA industry. Whereas I like doing both because I work in both sides, right? I do my interviews and then I obviously create content as well. So you can see most of the responses here as well. A lot of people like the combo there of Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas. So, yeah. So a lot of people upset with this news, but you can see there that, they're happy for Brian. And who wouldn't be? Again, I've said this time and time again, like it's a tough industry, guys, like to make a living in this, especially now. Like I've done videos on this before. You look at event coverage has gone down. People just aren't into watching the event stuff anymore. Interview numbers have gone down even outside of events. Like you look at some of the numbers, they're not really what they used to be, in my opinion. And I bring it up almost every video, but I think, the way we're consuming content now has changed a lot too, right? You're having, sites that are clipping stuff from other interviews. And so there's no real incentive to watch the full interview. And that has impacted a lot of work here, but it's good to see, like I said, that, someone like Brian Campbell is getting bigger roles. Brett Okamoto staying with ESPN, that there's a positive sign there. There is still an appetite for combat sports coverage. I think what's really taken over combat sports is sort of the personality side of things, especially on the YouTube side. Like, I've done videos on this before, but the highest rated YouTube content are the personalities that are on there. It's not even necessarily the interviews or the news or all that. That's why you're seeing a lot of these fighters now going and doing their own YouTube channels because they have such a big personality and brand that people want to actually hear their thoughts on things. So these are things that you can kind of keep tabs on and keep in mind. But traditional media, like you don't, one thing that I'll point out, and this kind of ties into this whole video, when was the last time, MMA fighting hired someone new? MMA Junkie. It's been a number of years. You look at all the big sites, like there's just not a lot of hiring going on for the most part. Now, we did have Uncrown come into the fray last year, Ariel Helwani's company that's partnered with Yahoo Sports. They obviously brought on a whole staff, but you're not seeing a lot of hiring going on these days, right? So to see moves like this, very encouraging. I still don't know exactly who's going to be part of the Paramount CBS crew as far as their like regular coverage. I would imagine obviously like John Anik and Megan O'Leary, I think they work directly for the UFC and then they'll obviously be on Paramount, but that's a little bit different than say what Brett was doing. Like Brett will not be part of UFC broadcasts anymore since he works for ESPN because they don't have the TV rights anymore. So this is where the industry does change a little bit. And listen, if you're watching this and you're not familiar with sort of the MMA industry and the media side of things, this stuff does impact you because what you were watching on your TV will look a little bit different next year, right? So it's not going to be the typical ESPN, I mean, a lot of it is like in terms of the production and all that. Like, was there a huge difference between ESPN era and Fox in terms of the presentation? Not really. UFC, I think, has final say on a lot of that stuff, but you will see like subtle changes like that. Certain people cage side, certain people doing the analysis and that. So that's where things change a little bit. So yeah, some big news. Again, just to recap, Brett Okamoto staying with ESPN, Brian Campbell leaving Morning Combat, but getting a bigger role with Paramount and CBS. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you think? What do you think some of the changes are going to be going forward on the broadcast side with the UFC in 2026? What do you think about ESPN still continuing to do coverage, but obviously scaling back a little bit? Yeah, let me know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.